Hey, Brixel! It finally happened. After almost a decade of Guild Wars 2 players falling to their knees begging ArenaNet to resurrect Season 1 of The Living World, they actually did it. The Living World Season 1 is playable once again. Damn, for a while I thought I was never gonna get to say that. After all this time, players can finally start plugging that rather significant story hole. So in this video, we're going to talk about what Season 1 was back in 2013, why it wasn't playable for so long, and of course how they brought this content zombie back to life. Now, I did go into a bit of detail about Season 1 in previous videos, but for the newcomers, the fact that Season 1 has not been available for so long was my biggest issue with the game. Forget world versus world issues and the lack of dungeon content. My main issue was that the story had a massive, gaping, very difficult to miss hole in it. But that hole is now slowly being filled, and I can only say, well done, ArenaNet. Better late than never. But before we get into the meat of the topic, a quick thank you to our patrons as well as all of our subscribers. We just hit 2,000 subs, and it sure has been a roller coaster getting here. So thank you to everyone who's joined us for this ride. Ding the thing if you haven't already, we have new MMO content coming out every dang week, as well as regular streams over on twitch.tv/brixelgaming. Alright, Brixel over. The Living World Season 1 was a very bold but ultimately poorly thought out experiment ArenaNet attempted back in 2013. The idea was that the story would be told organically through events that happened in the world rather than via a fixed narrative like the personal story. In the early days of The Living World, for example, Holbreck and the Black Citadel were both swamped by refugees escaping the then unknown new menace, the Molten Alliance. Areas of the map adjusted accordingly as the story unfolded, requiring these players to converge on locations to get the ball rolling. I still think it's a pretty interesting idea, having mysterious happenings throughout Tyria eventually culminating in massive Zerg-like battles. And if you were around for one of them, I think you can attest that they were exactly as amazing as they sound. But here's the snafu with Season 1. Because of the way the stories were told, it was virtually impossible to reintegrate all of it back into the game. At least not in its entirety. I mean, how would these mega battles ever be recreated, given that they require hundreds of players and would essentially have to be on repeat on an infinite cycle? And I mean, you couldn't also have a refugee crisis become a permanent part of these cities. So with these issues in mind, the last 9 years have been spent asking not just if Season 1 should be brought back, but can it be brought back? Rest easy, after playing it, I can confidently answer both of these questions. Yes, it should, and yes, it can. My biggest surprise when it comes to Flame and Frost is honestly just how long it is. I was expecting a thrown together summary of the narrative and really would have been happy with just that. But no, this is a chunky bit of content. Between the dash of grinding, the really interesting boss encounters, and the amount of time spent on characters, including the newly reintroduced Rox and Bram, Flame and Frost will take you around 3 to 4 hours to complete. Keeping in mind that this is only episode 1 of Season 1. There are 4 more episodes expected to drop throughout the year. And yes, I'll be covering all of them. Now, as we all know, ArenaNet hastily slapped a band-aid over the giant crater left by Season 1 in the form of a story summary cinematic. The attempt was at least to try and explain the events of Scarlet's War, even if players didn't get to see it for themselves. Call it the Guild Wars 2 equivalent of a previously on segment. The problem, however, is that while the cinematic explained who Scarlet is and what she did, Scarlet's dead. And frankly, the events of the war, it could be argued, are not any less significant as the introduction of the characters that would eventually form Dragon's Watch. So while the cinematic chats away about Scarlet, it glances over the introduction of your new best friends like this.
Bram Arison of Kragstead. Rox Whetstone, Gladium. Casimir Mead, Mesmer. Marjorie Delacroix, Investigator. And Taimi, Prodigy from Radasum.
So when we find out in Season 2 that Destiny's Edge has been replaced by these randos, you can see why new players get confused. And yes, I know the quest giver does have voice lines explaining who each character is, but if the cinematic is a sloppy band-aid, this is a band-aid that you found in your shower, and you haven't used a band-aid in months. And is that hair? Oh god, that's not even my hair! Okay, so getting back to Flame and Frost, it is fantastic that the story spends so much time in Rox and Bram. It may be a small thing, but I finally got Rox to properly introduce herself. It's a moment I've been waiting for so long. Finally getting that awkward social formality out of the way, maybe she'll stop calling me boss now that she knows my real name. It was also pretty special getting to see her and her devourer meet for the first time. A moment I can only accurately describe as... aww. Yeah, you also get a proper formal introduction to Bram, but look, his "you don't understand me, mom" phase doesn't get any more appealing just because you get a proper introduction. Honestly, part of me just hopes he stays in his room listening to Blink-182 for the rest of Season 1. But with that all being said, let's talk about the low points. The lowest point for me in Frost and Flame has to be the grinding disguised as gathering intel. It happens right before the final mission, which is a giant pain, but I'd still argue that this grind is a hell of a lot more fun than most of what went on in the personal story. I mean, you get to be a bear for crying out loud. If that ain't a tick off your bucket list, I don't know what the hell is. Right, after the slump, the final mission has you going into a Molten Alliance weapons factory to take it down from the inside. The mission contains not one, but two really kick-ass boss encounters, while also serving to flesh out Rox and Bram pretty satisfyingly. Plus, while this won't be most players' takeaways, the hidden mining nodes and the little achievement attached was also really fun. Besides this final mission, you get to experience events spoken about many times in the story, but until now have been pretty much unplayable. The Battle of Kragstead is a great example, and it was fantastic to finally get to experience all this firsthand. It all ends with a celebration around a fire where you're joined by your new friends, and you receive a pretty tidy reward of a 20-slot bag. So yeah, what else can I say other than that I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season, especially the reintroduction of the rest of Dragon's Watch. I don't know, I'm still a bit sus about bringing a tiny Asuran child on my mission, so they better do a damn good job of explaining that one to me. I played through Season 1 solo, as most players inevitably will, but it definitely does ask to be played as a group. I imagine the last mission especially would be really epic with your friends. I'm hoping to get a group together to do a run through, and likewise I have my eye on the new Strike mission. So be sure to follow us on Twitch to see all that go down live. All in all, I'm really happy with Flame and Frost, and I want to applaud ANET for bringing this content back to us in 2022, as well as bringing it up to their 2022 level of polish. And on top of that, the fact that this is free to all players, including the free-to-play players, forever, makes this feel like a genuine apology to the fans and a love letter to Guild Wars. But what do you think of Flame and Frost? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below and we can talk about it. Sub if you haven't already, we have new MMO content coming out every week. And if you really like our content, maybe consider becoming a patron. A big shout out to our patrons and a special shout out to our Guardian tier patrons, Anthony Hodgson, Liam Paulus, and Luke Pretorius. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Brixel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.